From KCRG TV9, this is First Alert Weather Now.
Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday evening edition of First Alert Weather Now. I'm meteorologist Thompson.
And I'm meteorologist Messier.
And we are bracing for what will be potentially a little bit of an icy mess tomorrow. It could be a little slick, could cause some travel trouble.
It definitely could. Freezing rain and freezing drizzle in the forecast for tomorrow afternoon and evening, and then potentially even earlier in the morning the farther south you go.
Yeah, it's something you never want to mess with, and so we'll have all the details on what you can expect there in depth throughout this program, as well as a little bit of an explainer on the WeatherWise segment about why all this mixed precipitation, what makes it happen.
That's right. We have this week's WeatherWise question. We'll have that in a few minutes.
Yeah, and your forecast for fun featured as well as we head through the second half of the coming week.
But first, we have what you need to know. In our forecast for this First Alert forecast, we have some freezing rain and freezing drizzle in the forecast for Wednesday afternoon. We are also watching for another chance for some rain and snow on Saturday. So once we get past Wednesday, we're not quite done with the precipitation, and it's going to stay wintry through the long-term forecast. Highs in the 20s and 30s. Pretty quiet right now on our Piasta City Cam. Temperatures are in the teens and 20s, 22 in Cedar Rapids, 25 in Piasta. Wind chills in the teens and single digits, feels like 7 in Waterloo and 6 in Dubuque. Cloud cover is across eastern Iowa right now, and it's going to be cloudy for basically the entire night into tomorrow morning ahead of that chance for some freezing rain. Now, in our setup for tonight, we have some pretty quiet conditions over the Midwest, but remember that is going to change as we head into tomorrow. Temperatures being pretty steady overnight, staying in the low 20s with the cloud cover, and winds coming out of the east around 5 to 15 miles per hour. Just some things to think about ahead of tomorrow's storm. Maybe go to the grocery store this evening rather than planning on doing it tomorrow afternoon, because you're going to want to try to avoid the roads if you can.
Yeah, if that was your plan for Wednesday, like you said, maybe do it a little bit earlier. We're not going to be stuck in our homes forever because we'll see some improvement later this week. That comes before another chance toward the weekend too.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll get into that in just a second, but some of those weekend events may be affected by that weather. First Alert Chief Meteorologist Joe Winters has your forecast for fun.
February is moving along. Certainly on Wednesday we have to watch. As you hear, we do have that conditions that will bring about some areas of precipitation, could cause some problems in your forecast for fun on Wednesday. That's what we're seeing right now for your walking forecast. Probably an outside walk, not a great idea on Wednesday unless it's in the morning. 36 though Thursday with some sunshine. You can get out Friday, 33 degrees with a lighter northeast breeze. Now tonight, the Iowa men's basketball team tip off again, just tipped off. Purdue at Iowa. Wisconsin comes to town on Saturday. Temperatures on Saturday will be interesting. We have a wintry mix moving in tonight. Travel back from Carver Hawkeye should be just fine. There's a soup, supper, and bake sale. That's from 5 to 7 up at the Lansing FFA. Homemade chicken noodle soup. That comes up on Friday. Chili, mac and cheese, baked goods. They'll accept a free will donation. Sounds like a great time to do that with the cooler temperatures we've seen. At the Wickiup Hill Learning Center, we have on Friday from 5 to 7 an outdoor luminary walk, a campfire, illuminated trail celebrating the beauty of winter. Bring s'more supplies and you can make some s'mores by the fire. Winter Bachfest in the Amanda's Performing Arts Center. That's on Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5. Watch the weather. It's a winter party with music, food, goats, and barrels of beer. And let's not forget Iowa State men's basketball. Hilton Coliseum, the place. That happens on Saturday, 32 degrees. Watch the weather. Could be some snow. TCU comes to town with a tip-off of noon. That's a complete look at our February forecast for fun.
Now, your First Alert forecast with meteorologist Thompson.
All quiet around eastern Iowa tonight, but as Hannah said, that increase in cloud cover is sort of the first sign of that storm system moving in. It's going to keep our temperatures from falling all that much tonight, as well as what will be a gradual influx of some warmer and more humid air too. Now, temperatures right now in the upper teens to low 20s. It is still pretty blustery out there from the northeast. That's helping to keep those temperatures on the cooler side. It's also driving those wind chills down into the single digits to low teens. Now, your First Alert highlights a couple things over the next 24 hours. There's the possibility of a little bit of light snow generally in our northern counties as this precipitation begins tomorrow. The bigger highlight, though, as we end your Wednesday is the threat for some slick roads with the freezing rain that is possible. This takes place especially later in the afternoon into the evening hours of your Wednesday, and that's when things could get a little bit tricky for both walkers and drivers out there. Now, a winter weather advisory is in effect for everyone south of Highway 20 during the day on Wednesday. It includes that corridor of Highway 20, Waterloo and Dubuque included. To the north, no advisory right now, but even though you're outside of that advisory, doesn't mean they could see some of those wintry impacts. We are going to keep an eye on those locations too. Now, tonight with those clouds around, precipitation actually is trying to fall out of them. You maybe saw a little of that wispiness underneath those clouds as they moved in before sunset. It is falling into very dry air right now. Our dew points are quite low. They're actually below zero in some cases, and that will take a little time to overcome before that precipitation becomes much more likely. Now, your first alert forecast overnight, 13 in Charles City, 24 in Iowa City, will keep things fairly quiet as we go through the night as skies stay cloudy. For tomorrow, temperatures will be back into the upper 20s to low 30s. In fact, a few locations in the south have a window of opportunity to reach above freezing for a period of time. That would help with this freezing rain situation, but many areas near or below that number, and that's why we're expecting that icy mix. Now, the rest of tonight, again, quiet, cloudy skies continue, but by the time we get toward tomorrow morning, little bits of precipitation try to show up. It's going to be working against that dry air, but it's all part of the process. And as we get into the afternoon, notice that we start to see some of this icy precipitation show up south of Interstate 80 by 3 o'clock. By 5 and 6 o'clock, right in the heart of that evening commute home from work, we're talking about areas along and south of Highway 20 seeing that threat for freezing rain on a scattered basis. Now, later in the evening, this all begins to end, but some freezing drizzle could persist into the overnight hours, at least for a little while, before drier air begins to win out, and we'll see actually clear skies move in for your Thursday. Now, that chance for ice includes potentially up to 1/10 of an inch of accumulation. Some areas less than that, but any ice, especially on untreated pavement, can cause those slick spots. Be ready for a longer commute home from work and school tomorrow. It's a possibility that you'll need to entertain, and you'll just want to slow down and take it easy. As you're driving, give yourself that extra stopping distance and just try to keep control of that vehicle. As we head into the weekend, we talked about that chance for precipitation on Saturday. That's a storm system that moves through. It's not going to last forever, but it does give us a shot at seeing some of that rain to the south, snow to the north, and a bit of a mix in between. The exact track and strength of the system will be key for who gets what. It does look like at this point, based on the information we have, the best chance for snow that will be accumulating and potentially a little bit heavy is up in the Dakotas and Minnesota. Here in eastern Iowa, we have that chance of some of that precipitation clipping our area, but it generally stays to our north. So, two things to highlight. Wednesday and Saturday is the potential for something impacting travel around eastern Iowa. Next week, we will turn a little bit colder as temperatures dip slightly below normal for this time of year, but nothing extreme on either end. No return to that early spring-like warmth and no return to that bitter Arctic cold that we saw either over the last couple of weeks. A little smoother, a little flatter in terms of that temperature curve.
That is something that is kind of good to hear, the fact that we're not going to get at least really, really cold and we actually have some more normal weather. But just the fact that we have precipitation in the forecast is some good news. It would have been nice if it wasn't ice, but we don't get to control what kind of precipitation we get. But we can forecast it based off of temperatures, and that's kind of what this week's Weatherwise question is all about.
What makes something a wintry mix?
That is a great question from Owen. It's all about those temperatures we can get in the atmosphere. So let's start out with just regular rain. It's still pretty cold up high in the atmosphere when we have rain in the forecast, but as the snow higher up falls into areas of warmer air, it melts and becomes rain all the way as it falls down to the surface. Then as we get freezing rain, that's what we're expecting tomorrow, that's when we have cold air higher up in the atmosphere, that layer of warm air that melts that snow into rain, but then really close to the ground, the rain will it'll be cold, so the rain will freeze onto surfaces like roadways and sidewalks. So that's really when we get that freezing rain. Then we get that wintry mix, otherwise kind of known as sleet. That is when we have cold air higher up, warm air melts it, but then it refreezes once it gets farther down to the ground. So that cold air is actually a thicker layer of cold air in sleet and wintry mix than it is in freezing rain, allowing it to freeze a little bit more into kind of a slush, otherwise known as sleet. Next, of course, we have just regular snow. That's when we have cold air all throughout the atmosphere. That's what we see in snow. So again, in general, Owen, sleet and wintry mix happens when there's a smaller area of warm air between areas of cold air in the atmosphere, causing that snow to melt and then have more time to refreeze into sleet. Thank you so much for that question. If you have a question, head over to kcrg.com/unews and we'll answer that here on Weather Now. Corey?
And we're watching that chance for that mixed precipitation, mostly in the form of freezing rain, though we could see a little bit of snow and perhaps a little bit of plain rain in the far south as we go through your Wednesday. Winter weather advisory in effect for everyone along and south of Highway 20. That's where slick and icy roads will be the most likely. If you live north of there, we can't rule it out either, as precipitation tends to be a little bit more toward the snowy side, though light. But still, there could be even just a few hundredths of an inch of ice up that way, and that would be enough to cause those roads to be slick. So we really do want you to take care if you're driving later tomorrow afternoon and evening in particular. Now, heading into the weekend, we do get a couple of quiet days at least. Sunnier on Thursday. Temperatures get into the 30s, but that wind will be a factor. It's going to send our wind chills down into the teens. Friday, a little bit less windy, but a little bit cloudier. That's as that Saturday system moves in, gives us that rain and snow chance. Next week, we're tracking the possibility of colder temperatures. But remember, we talked about that narrower temperature range. We're going to get as much as 10 degrees above normal on Thursday and about 7 degrees below normal by the middle of next week, but that's a lot smaller. We were all over the graph over the last couple of weeks, and so it is nice to have a little more consistency. If it's going to be cold, might as well keep it in that smaller range, keep a negative sign out of the way there, at least in this meteorologist's opinion. Next week does offer a chance for a little bit of light snow on Tuesday. The overall picture is for a somewhat active weather pattern to continue as we head into the middle portion of the month of February, something we'll of course keep an eye on as it gets closer.
Kind of make it up for the dry January we had.
Yeah, it would, and that's not a bad thing as we get into the springtime season, as long as we keep it not too crazy. We don't want to set up that spring flooding either, but it doesn't look like that's imminent either.
No, just a couple of chances for precipitation in the forecast.
Indeed. We'll be tracking them all, including tomorrow's ice. We'll have the latest updates as it's going on that edition of First Alert Weather Now. For now, though, we thank you for watching. Have a great night.